feeling like I'm Akademiks. Can't ride no whip.
They actually did an interview, and they're comparing what's going on with Diddy to R. Kelly. Look.
Is being modeled on the investigation that brought down music superstar R. Kelly almost 2 years ago. And in that case, the federal government used allegations that were made in civil lawsuits against R. Kelly to bring criminal charges. Nadia Shihata was one of the prosecutors who got R. Kelly convicted of sex trafficking. She's now a defense attorney and happens to be here with me live. Nadia, thank you so much for stepping in. So first of all, your reaction to the news you're seeing, to the two raids, all of the material that I've just provided prior to you coming on, and the news that the feds are modeling this case after your case.
Yeah, I mean, it's big news. Obviously, taking an overt step in an investigation of searching two homes means the investigation is well underway here. They clearly have probable cause to believe a federal crime has been committed and that evidence of that crime or multiple crimes would be found in the two locations that they searched. So this is big news. And if I'm P. Diddy or his lawyers, I'd be very concerned at this point.
The biggest concern, as I understand it, and check me if I'm wrong here, is that when people sign non-disclosure agreements, as may have happened in P. Diddy's world, and in big celebrities' world, it happens all the time. That's that, right? Doesn't matter if you file a civil lawsuit. But when the feds come knocking, NDAs mean nothing. Is that what you found in the prosecution of R. Kelly? All of these lawsuits and these accusers or people who may have been covered by NDAs, the floodgates were open and they could tell you everything, AKA, is that possibly happening here?
That may well be happening here. An NDA, when push comes to shove, is not going to trump a grand jury subpoena or a federal agent.
And by the way, usually most NDAs actually say you can't tell your friend what happens here, but if you are instructed legally and lawfully by a court, you can. So most NDAs will actually tell, if they want to inform the person signing of their rights, they're going to tell them, yeah, this NDA means nothing once the cops come. Like, yeah, this only means you can't tell your friend and go gossip on social media, talk a bunch of shit, but otherwise, yeah.
Or prosecutor asking you questions, but I wouldn't say that they have no effect. NDAs can make people very reluctant and hesitant to speak to law enforcement. So if it's someone that law enforcement is not already aware of, they may be wary to, themselves contact law enforcement to provide information. And so they can still deter people in that sense.
But once they know they're safe, they can speak, which I think is always, well, it's a concern if you're the target. And we are told that Diddy is indeed the target of this investigation. Nadia Shihata, thank you so much for being on. I'll call you again.
Okay, so
Thank you.
Let me go through two things really quickly. So,
thank you for watching.
Sorry.
Go to news.
So let me kind of look at what the law is. So essentially, and again, we're kind of assuming here, but we're trying to like play this out and trying to get as much information as possible. If we're going to think about what Diddy is probably facing, the most applicable laws that would probably come into play that federally they would be looking at him for is either sex trafficking or human trafficking, right? So we're going to look at what legally that's defined as. Obviously, they're going to probably try to trump it up with some additional charges of if they found drug possession, and maybe like weapons possession. But those things, even though those are still serious, because we do know, like, if you get caught with a gun, an illegal gun, or if you're a felon, which I don't know if Diddy is, but those could have years in jail consequences too. But the main thing that would be it's over. It would be clearly human trafficking or sex trafficking. Actually, let's actually even look up the R. Kelly case real quick. R. Kelly found guilty. What exactly did he get found guilty of? He faced allegations of sexual abuse. The counts went back to his start of career, blah, blah. He was jailed for 30 years after being found guilty of 8 counts of sex trafficking. Okay. So it's sex trafficking and 1 count of racketeering. Was that in a federal court? Was that in a federal court? I know he was actually charged. Look, in Chicago.
After sentencing, supporters of R. Kelly shot.
Okay. A judge sentenced him to Yeah. A 20-year. Okay, yeah, so the Northern District of Illinois actually did this one. And then there was a state case, I believe, in New York, consecutive to his New York sentence. They say he's a sexual predator who uses fame and wealth to abuse victims and show no remorse. Oh, wow. Okay. This was a very interesting thing. What was the racketeering? So if we're just going, like, we're just trying to be smart with this, like, it looks like they're looking at him for sex trafficking. We're gonna look up the law for that in a second. Racketeering. Why was it racketeering though? Well, I guess they're saying he created a criminal enterprise of how he was procuring these women and moving them around. That's the enterprise. Actually, I just kind of like fucking answered my own question, which that's good. Let me just watch a little thing of this.
Trafficking, and you might hear racketeering and think, isn't that for mafia bosses?
Okay.
But this was part of a unique strategy on the part of federal prosecutors.
Yeah, see, that's what, you know, the federal prosecutors do something different. That's why they get all the gangs. Because once they say you have built an organization, which means you have a systematic way of doing a crime, and you have people, places, and money involved. As long as there's a crime being committed, that is kind of racketeering, right? Now, obviously, you use it at the highest level. Well, let me not say the highest level. You use it at levels for like, a mafia or like the mob, right? When they have an organization of moving drugs and punishing people or killing people or ordering murders, but you can't get the guys who's pulling the trigger when they're the power players. So you get them with a RICO charge because they're making they're calling the shots. They're just not pulling the trigger, right? But they use a racketeering charge to get Kelly. Damn.
To introduce sexual assault allegations that were well outside the statute of limitations. And at the center of this case, Lester, was the story of Aaliyah, a pop singer who many people know died tragically in a plane crash in 2001. According to testimony, she met R. Kelly when she was just 12 years old. A witness, a compelling witness for the prosecution, said that she actually walked in on R. Kelly performing a sex act with Aaliyah when she was either 13 or 14 years old. We then heard from one of his employees that at the age of 15, he bribed an official in Illinois to get a...
Okay, all right. Wow, okay, so let's look at the federal law when it comes to sex trafficking. It says sex trafficking is recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, obtaining, patronizing, or soliciting of a person for the purposes of a commercial sex act, in which the commercial sex act is induced by force, fraud, coercion, or in which the person is induced to perform such an act that has not attained 18 years of age. Okay, so the first part is clearly sex trafficking would occur if, or you would imagine that it would apply here if they're searching two different places in two different states, right? And Diddy constantly moves between both. For example, with Cassie had stories about New York, also LA, right? So you know he was flying her all over the place. That would be transportation, so we check this box. The next box is where the commercial sex act, and we probably got to get a definition of what a commercial sex act means. But anyway, it says in which the commercial sex act is induced by force. Now, according to Cassie, she felt, she was forced, maybe not physically, but she was under force and under duress to basically do these things to please him, and just by nature of the fact that he controlled not only all her finances, he controlled her life. Like, I mean, even her medical records was going to him before she could get access to it. And then apparently when she tried to leave, he would send people around her to kind of induce her, like kind of put some fear in her that she could kind of act right. So this would kind of come down to sex trafficking. You get what I mean? Now, here's the thing about it. Is the sex trafficking is going to, I would imagine they were trying to get, like, if they do bring charges against Diddy, they want it to be so overwhelming, he's fucked. So they're going to say, okay, we're going to bring multiple counts. Cassie, that's one count against Mrs. Ventura. The 17-year-old at the time, I don't know her name now, she would be one count. Lil Rod, if that was a thing, that would be a count. Other people, and I got to imagine that they've done their due diligence and interviewed people. You know what struck me, which I didn't talk about last time, right? So Cassie lawyer spoke, and I got to think that the lawyer spoke with the permission of Cassie, right? It says Cassie's lawyer called out Sean Diddy Combs, depraved conduct after Homeland Security raided 2 of his homes. This is what Cassie's lawyer said. We will always support, and notice it says we will always support law enforcement when it seeks to prosecute those that have violated the law. Now, what this tells me is that this lawyer probably walked Cassie into some type of meeting with the feds, and Cassie probably is going to be testifying against Diddy. Or Cassie has provided information that could help this investigation, maybe trying to verify what does she have, what she left out of the lawsuit, maybe tapes that, remember she constantly said Diddy would show her tapes to embarrass her, to be like, hey, remember you fucking all these niggas? You get what I'm saying? So, who knows? Perhaps, it's not even perhaps, Cassie's going to be cooperating, clearly. Like, if they're commented on this, who the hell would the cops want to talk to and get as a witness more than Cassie? Which, by the way, Cassie has literally taken down Diddy. And again, I'm not saying it's not Diddy's fault or whatever, but still, imagine this finesse. You get paid by the motherfucker, and you probably signed NDAs, right? Remember, she signed NDAs back in the day, probably. But then she sued, right? And Diddy paid her off and probably had her sign new NDAs that she can't file again, she can't write a book, she can't do this, she can't do that. And now she gets to legally break the NDA once again by cooperating with the government to get Diddy locked up. Cassie, I don't know what did. Well, obviously, I was going to say I don't know what Diddy did to Cassie, but clearly we know. But Cassie is the person who's going to sink Diddy. Imagine getting paid $50 million or $30 million, whatever that number is, and then working with the cops to send that nigga to jail. Cassie won. Got paid and still gonna get quote-unquote justice, right? Damn, that's crazy. So Cassie's lawyer celebrated Diddy's homes being raided. Yeah, that sounds like a lawyer who's been working with her client beyond the settlement that Diddy gave, working with her client to deal with the feds in making sure, because here's the thing too, and there's a lot of muddy waters. When you're dealing with the federal authorities, especially in a situation like this, remember, according to Cassie, Cassie was helping to procure these escorts. She was the one searching for, hey, I'm looking for the nigga with the biggest dick in town, big black dick or whatever Diddy told her to do. I could imagine maybe she has signed some type of proffer agreement, signed some type of immunity agreement that she doesn't get charged, right? Now, granted, she's a victim of some sorts, but if there are other victims, they might have felt that Cassie facilitated them being victimized. Do you get what I'm saying? So Cassie, I do believe, probably spoke to the feds. Probably, with her lawyer, says, hey, we'll cooperate whatever you need. We probably got some extra shit we could give you and you could lock up Diddy. But we got to make sure that Cassie is number one, always seen as a victim, because she is a victim. And the understanding of law enforcement is that anything that you're talking about with her that she might have admitted that she done was done under duress and done at the force, right? Or the fear of threat from Sean Puffy Combs. Do you get what I'm saying? Wow. That's some shit. Okay, so actually I got some new documents here. And by the way, it's getting interesting because there's so many moving parts, and I think some people just don't want to be involved. And you're getting to realize that, number one, this ain't the streets. A lot of these people have either careers or families. There's nobody trying to stand with a fucking sexual deviant. Everybody's quickly trying to say, hey, get me out of the lawsuit, get me out of this. And they're down to put out statements, or they're down to just say, man, I'll tell you whatever you want to know. I don't know too much, but I'll tell you whatever you want to know about Diddy. I'll tell you about someone who's doing that shortly. But before we get to that, this is a sample of Diddy's. Hold on, give me 1 second. Is it this?